Chapter 2 The Preacher. Shania, deep in thought, dug carefully about the budding daffodils. How lovely the soft yellow against the gray rock, she thought. For 12 years she had nurtured the plants from Eden Valley. Each time they bloomed, renewing her vows of loyalty to the God of Adam. This small cloistered garden had become her retreat when the clamoring world ridiculed her loyalty and nibbled at her simple faith. At first she had hoped her father would join her in worshiping God each Sabbath. But upon his return from Eden he had seemed preoccupied, hardly aware of her newfound joy. Ona had made no attempt to hide her scorn, and had it not been for Ira the gardener, Shania's lot would have been a lonely one indeed. But as they worked together in the gardens, she had told him of her grandparents' steady hope, and of the experience in Eden Valley. Ira confided he had always believed, but did not know how to worship God. Together they prayed and pledged themselves to wait patiently for the Holy One. But now something had happened that roiled the steady rhythm of Shania's days. To their door had come a stranger, a cousin from Havala River land, a rugged man with the tawny grace of her father's people. A maker of musical instruments, he had wished to set up a business in the city. Nathan was delighted to have a kinsman in their midst and insisted he stay with them until his business was established. So Ben had become a member of their household. And from the first day, Shania felt his admiring eyes following her everywhere. Ira spoke now as he trimmed a small, eager evergreen that clambered profusely over the rock wall. "The young man, he obviously finds you enchanting. What do you think?" Blushing, Shania thrust her tools into the soil with more force than necessary. "I am very unexperienced at this sort of thing. Because they are violent, profane creatures who know nothing of God, I have ignored all the young men Mother brings around. I would rather live alone forever than marry one of them and have to bow down to their ugly gods." "But this man from Havala, surely he worships the true God? He grew up in the fields of Sep. How could he do otherwise?" "And do you find him interesting?" the old gardener probed. "Well," the young woman replied, glancing up shyly from the patch of flowers, "I am absolutely tongue-tied in his presence, and my heart leaps about in my chest like an acrobat in the marketplace." Ira chuckled and went about his work, noting that she daydreamed more than she weeded. That evening, as the family lounged in the ivory room about an open fire that had been built against the chill spring air, Ona spoke from a fur rug she had shared with Nathan. "I think we should prepare a feast in Ben's honor, to introduce him to others in the city. His life needs something besides work and these quiet evenings here with us." She smiled at the tall man, who still bore something of his country's heritage. Shania wondered if he reminded her mother of Nathan when he arrived in the city, long years before, still brown and bearded from the hidden valley of Havala. "We will have feasting and dancing, and this room will be filled with laughter and music, and I will forget I am no longer a girl." Ona's eyes sparkled in the firelight. "What do you say, Ben? Would that not brighten your life?" The bearded young man looked up from the instruments he was stringing and laughed, even white teeth breaking the golden browns of his hair and skin. "You make it sound very exciting, Ona, but I know nothing of dancing." "You drink a little wine and then become proficient as the rest," said Nathan wearily. "It is the women, at any rate, who lend themselves best to the dance." "I would be honored to meet your friends." Ben pulled his fingers across the strings, frowning in concentration. "Shania, what do you say to all this?" "She does not like our entertaining," the mother answered for her daughter. "She thinks we are all a godless lot." Ona always left the girl feeling awkward, and tonight, with Ben's eyes upon her, she fumbled for words. "I'm not sure you'll like the kind of celebrations we have here in the city, Ben. Though my mother has only your happiness at heart, it is true I do not enjoy them." Her sea-green eyes serious and intense, she sat shyly in her simple linen dress, coppery hair tumbling over her shoulders. "But you will come, to please me?" Ben looked at her with merry, bold eyes, and her heart began that foolish prancing again. Scornfully, the older woman interrupted once more. No, Ben, you'll never entice her, for it'll be the evening and the morning of the seventh day, and Shania would not set her holy toe into our rowdy midst during those sacred hours. Nathan laid his hand upon his wife's arm. Please, Ona, enough. Shania has a right to her convictions. She was fine till you dragged her off to Eden. Afterwards, she has returned more Abigail's daughter than mine. And the years have not helped. Show me any other 27-year-old girl who scorns dancing in the company of young men. Soon I shall betroth her to the son of Zimri, and she will be forced to take her place within society of the city and stop this pleasant peasant life in the gardens with Ira. Shania's heart stood still. She knew well the son of Zimri, a handsy, wealthy scoundrel with cruel eyes. Nathan spoke, and in his voice was a fury she had never heard before. Our daughter will never be betrothed to any man against her wishes, Ona. Ben rose from his bench and beckoned Shania to follow. He picked up her long wool wrap and placed it about her shoulders as they entered the gardens. Sorry I got you into that. Guess there was some pretty strong emotions bottled up there. I didn't expect to find anyone here in the city who retained the old ways. I remember the time you visited Havala. I thought you were the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen, and now that you are a woman, you are even lovelier. Thank you, Ben. There were so many cousins those brief days at grandfather's, I had no time to sort you all out. But I love having you here with us. As you can see, my mother is impatient with my beliefs, but I love her deeply, and I know she loves me too. She does not understand my need to follow Adam's God. What will you do about her plans for the sixth night? I shall attend, Ben said quietly. Do you not hold sacred the hours of the Sabbath? Have you not seen the lamb burnt upon the altar, and do you not know its holy meaning? Do you not want to greet and commune with God during those special hours he shares with us? Believe me, Ben, Mother's feast will be no place for a follower of the Promised One, on Sabbath Eve or any other. I'm tired of those country ways. You were the only there briefly. It was a novelty to you, but I want to see how other men live. You will see all right, in this city. Her voice was edgy with disappointment. You will see babies offered upon altars, while their half-naked mothers leap and dance in the firelight, as though their hearts were not breaking. You will see depravity in all its filthy detail. Men will accost you on the streets and in your place of work, seeking your body for their vile lust. Your best friend will disappear, never to return, because some thief has hacked him to death and thrown the pieces to the dogs for whatever his purse contained. The day will come, Ben, when you will long to see sheep grazing on the hillsides in your peaceful valley, and to hear the voice of Sep raised in prayer. Suddenly he turned toward him in the still, cool night and kissed her gently. I didn't mean to upset you, Shania. If you had been in Havala, I would have never left. I know you are right, but I feel confined there, restless to see beyond these hills. Perhaps after your mother's initiation I will be content to return. Will you go with me? Everything in her longed to say yes to this man she knew so little of, but an inner voice cautioned. I would think about it, she replied, her voice still wobbly from the first unexpected kiss. On the night of the celebration, the house was bright with light, clay lamps burning everywhere, even along the paths throughout the gardens. Nathan's harp and Ben's flute wafted their music out through the open windows, and laughter and singing filled the room. Standing on the small terrace a few steps beneath her sleeping quarters, Shania could watch the merrymaking, and her heart ached as she saw Ben, wine cup in his hand, boldly appraising the women and their dancing as they became more suggestive. This is what he came for, she thought sadly. Excitement. The tempter Eve met in Eden has 1,000 ways to entice men away from God, and Ben is dazzled already. But what had he said? That after tonight perhaps he would return home, and then he would take her with him? She knew she would go. Back to Havala, the nights still along the great shining river, and to the safe retreat of Ben's loving care forever. There she would bear children to sit about the tables of sap, and she would never be different and lonely again. She decided to go to her own rock-walled garden, away from the raucous laughter and the drunken singing, to pray. But when she was enclosed in its cool, quiet isolation, she could not enter the still presence of God. Something in her tightly coiled, expectant, rejected for the first time the peace of her beloved spot. Somehow she sensed that what she had been there with God might ask a high price of her. She could not pray tonight, but instead sat upon a boulder beside the small stream that bubbled over and around rocks, watching large drifting clouds fragment into trails of frothy whiteness. She waited, hardly knowing it, for Ben's footstep. When it came, she was not terribly surprised. "I thought I'd find you here." He stood so tall in the moonlight, sturdier, stronger than the city men she knew, dressed in a short, belted tunic, leather thongs laced high about his muscular legs. "Come with me to the feast. They are about to start eating. You need not stay long." He hesitated, then approached closer. She could smell the wine upon his breath, and for a fleeting moment thought of how Abigail would mourn his loss of innocence. "I just want them to see how beautiful you are, and that I am not so alone after all." Her resolve shattered. Alone, Ben? This handsome Havala man? Was he indeed uneasy in the company of Ona's sophisticated friends? His need of her touched her heart as no other argument could have, and she went to his side, indicating her willingness to go. "Only for a short time, Ben. Just until you have met a few people and feel more comfortable. I am not dressed for such an occasion. Are you sure you wish to be seen with me?" Ben glanced at the pale green gown draped softly across one shoulder and knew she would be, in her simplicity, the loveliest woman in the gathering. "You'll do very well," he replied, laughing gently. "You are a true Havala girl, beautiful in the best of ways." She wished he had not said that. It reminded her of Abigail, and tonight she did not want to think of her grandmother. Not on the 6th night, when Sep killed the lamb for all of his family's sins. When they entered the ivory room, all the guests gathered about the long table instantly quieted. They knew Nathan and Ona had a daughter, but they had seen less and less of her in recent years. And now she stood before them on the arm of the young barbarian from Nathan's homeland, and a murmur of delight arose at the sight of the handsome pair. Shania, glancing at her parents, noted triumph in her mother's eyes and startled sadness in her father's. For the first time she understood how he had sold his soul for Ona. She would not be so foolish. Tonight she would help Ben find acceptance among the crafty city dwellers, and by tomorrow he would have seen enough that he would ask her parents if he could take her back to Havala. Her mother would be difficult, but her father would rejoice, and in the end enable her to go. The next day, however, produced no such miracle. Ben thought the ongoing feast a huge success. Ona kept the tables piled high with delicacies. Nathan entered into the festivities only as much as courtesy demanded, and Shania slipped away to her bed soon after the midnight feasting ended. When, on the morning of the first day, the last guest struggled homeward, Nathan surveyed the debris skeptically. "Are you sure, Ona, it's worth it?" His wife laid wearily upon a couch, dark circles beneath her eyes. "Oh, Nathan, you are always so grim. There are servants to put the house back in order, and the guests will long remember the celebration. For kinsmen, you will be labeled a generous host with a beautiful wife and daughter. What more could you ask for? A garden whose every nook has not been soiled with the evils of humanity, and a daughter who retains her simple love for God. What are you talking about? Shania stayed but a few hours on the 6th night, and only to please Ben, I'm sure. At any rate, it's time she took her place within society. I heard many compliments among the guests about her beauty. With a few jewels and some experience with cosmetics, she could have her pick of the young men, I expect. Aren't you proud of her, Nathan? I am proud of her loyalty to God, Ona. I don't want it compromised ever. You are unrealistic, my love. She cannot live out her days with more old than Ira for a friend, and walking in the garden as a lover. Can't you see her joy in Ben? He is, perhaps, your God's answer to her loneliness. After all, he was raised in Havala. He is used to their ways of worship, and he would tolerate Shania's peculiarities. Her peculiarities. His voice rose dangerously. Tolerate them. Ona, I do not want a man for Shania who will tolerate her purity. I want one who values it. Ben is not that one. In time, God will provide, if Shania can be patient. Ona laid her hand on her husband's arm. Be calm, Nathan, she said quietly. You are reacting out of your own sorrow at having married me, and cruelty ill becomes you. Perhaps in the end Shania will prove wiser than her father, and Ben will have to look elsewhere. But yes or no, you cannot force her decision. Your God is a God of freedom. You told me so yourself. That's why he allowed Eve to eat the fruit. You must give Shania the same liberty, my darling. He sat on the floor beside her couch and rested his head in her lap. She stroked his hair, and they did not speak. Each knew the other's thoughts well.